March 14th, 2019. A 23-year-old tourist checks into a hotel in Bangkok. Security cameras capture her entering the elevator at 11:47 p.m. She presses the button for the fourth floor. She never arrives. When investigators reviewed the footage, they found something that made no sense. The elevator never stopped on the fourth floor. It went straight to the basement. But here's what haunts investigators to this day. The basement cameras? They show the elevator arriving completely empty. She's not the only one. Across Asia, tourists are vanishing in ways that defy explanation. Today, we're examining for disappearances where the evidence doesn't just fail to provide answers, it creates impossible questions. What you're about to hear will disturb you. This is the most disturbing unsolved disappearances in Asia. Jim Thompson was not just any tourist. He was an American war hero, a former intelligence officer, and by 1967, he had become known across Asia as the Silk King of Thailand, a man who had built an empire from nothing. March 23, 1967. Thompson left his Bangkok home for Easter weekend in the Cameron Highlands of Malaysia. He was visiting friends at a bungalow called Moonlight. For 3 days, everything was normal. On Sunday morning, March 26, he attended church with his friends. They returned to the bungalow for lunch. At 1:30 in the afternoon, Thompson told his friends he was going for a walk. He walked down Kamunting Road into the jungle. He never came back. When Thompson didn't return by dinner, his friends contacted the local police. By nightfall, search teams were combing the jungle with tracker dogs. What happened next became the largest land search in Southeast Asian history. Over 500 people joined the search. Police, military units, indigenous trackers who knew every inch of that jungle, volunteers from across Malaysia, even mystics who performed rituals too. For 11 days, they searched. They found nothing. Not a footprint, not a piece of clothing, not a single trace that Jim Thompson had ever walked into that jungle. Jim Thompson was 61 years old, but he was fit. He knew the area. He had visited the Cameron Highlands before, and he left for his walk in broad daylight on a well-traveled road. The jungle where he disappeared, it wasn't remote wilderness. It was less than a mile from the bungalow. Search teams could hear each other calling from one end to the other. So how does a man vanish in an area that's small, in the middle of the afternoon, without leaving a single trace? Theories emerged. Some said he fell into a tiger trap set by indigenous tribes. But no traps were found in that area. Others claimed he was kidnapped by communist insurgents. But no ransom demand ever came. Some even suggested he staged his own disappearance, that his past as an intelligence officer had caught up with him. But the most disturbing theory? It came from the indigenous trackers themselves. They said the jungle had taken him, that some places in those highlands don't give back what they take. Jim Thompson's body has never been found, and he's not the only one who vanished without explanation. What connects these cases isn't just geography. It's a pattern investigators refuse to discuss publicly. This next disappearance reveals why. Tiphaine Véron was living her dream. A 36-year-old French woman who had spent years planning the perfect trip to Japan. She arrived in Tokyo in July 2018. For 2 weeks, she explored the country she had fallen in love with through books and films. On July 27th, she traveled to Nikko, a mountain town 2 hours north of Tokyo, famous for its shrines and waterfalls. She checked into a small hotel near the town center. The next morning, July 29th, security cameras capture her walking toward the Takanujinja Shrine, a sacred waterfall deep in the forest. She was wearing a white t-shirt, black pants, and carrying a small backpack. She told the hotel staff she would return by evening. She never did. When Tiphaine didn't return, the hotel manager waited. 1 day, then 2. On the 3rd day, he finally contacted police. Hundreds of volunteers combed the mountains. Police dogs tracked her scent to the shrine area, then lost it completely at the waterfall. They found nothing. No backpack, no clothing, no sign she had ever reached the waterfall. Tiphaine's phone remained active for hours after she left the hotel. Cell tower data showed it moving through the forest, then stopping near the shrine at 11:23 a.m. At 11:24 a.m., 1 minute later, the phone went completely dead. Not powered off, not out of battery. The phone had been physically destroyed. Someone broke that phone, deliberately, and it happened at the exact location where her scent disappeared. Police interviewed everyone who had been in the area that morning. Hikers, shrine workers, local guides. Multiple witnesses reported seeing a man near the shrine that morning. A man who claimed to be a guide, offering to show tourists hidden waterfalls off the main trail. But when police investigated, they found something chilling. There were no licensed guides working in that area on July 29th. The man had no identification. No one could describe his face clearly, and after Tiphaine disappeared, he was never seen again. Then investigators returned to Tiphaine's hotel room. They performed a luminol test. Luminol is a chemical that reveals blood even after it's been on the wall beside her bed. The luminol reacted. A large stain, roughly the size of a human torso, glowed bright blue under the UV light. But when forensic teams tested it, it wasn't blood, it was cleaning solution. Industrial-grade bleach mixed with ammonia, the kind used to eliminate biological evidence. Someone had scrubbed that wall, scrubbed it hard enough to remove every trace of what had been there. Tiphaine Véron has never been found. Her family still searches the forests of Nikko. A guide who wasn't a guide. A phone deliberately destroyed. A hotel room scrubbed clean with industrial chemicals. But what happened in South Korea in 1991 is different, because this time there wasn't just one victim. March 26, 1991. 5 boys left their homes in Daegu, South Korea. Woo Cheo-won, age 13. Jo Ho-yeon, 12. Kim Young-gyu, 11. Park Chan-in, 10. And Kim Jong-sik, just 9 years old. They were neighbors, best friends. And that morning, they had a plan. They were going to Mount Waryeong, a small forested hill near their neighborhood, a place they had played dozens of times before. They told their parents they were going to search for salamander eggs. It was spring. The streams were full. It was what every kid in the neighborhood did. At 10:30 that morning, a 6th boy, Kim Tae-yong, started out with them, but he got hungry. He turned back home for breakfast. That decision saved his life. By afternoon, none of the boys had returned home. At 3 p.m., Woo Cheo-won's father received a call from his son's taekwondo class. His son hadn't shown up. The parents rushed to Mount Waryeong. They called the boys names. They searched the trails. They found nothing. By nightfall, police had joined the search. Within days, it became a national emergency. Over 300,000 volunteers searched that mountain. Police, military units, trained search dogs, psychics who claimed they could sense the boys' spirits. But here's what made no sense. Mount Waryeong wasn't wilderness. It was a gentle hill in the middle of a city. There was an army base nearby, a shooting range, residential neighborhoods on all sides. The entire mountain could be walked in less than 2 hours. Search teams covered every inch, multiple times. They found nothing. Not a shoe, not a piece of clothing, not a single trace that 5 children had ever been there. Years passed. The boys' fathers quit their jobs. They drove across South Korea, following every lead, every rumor, every supposed sighting. The case haunted the entire nation. Every parent in South Korea knew their names. Then, on September 26, 2002, 11 years after they disappeared, a man gathering acorns on Mount Waryeong made a discovery. In a shallow ravine, less than 2 miles from where the boys were last seen, he found human remains. DNA testing confirmed what the families had feared for over a decade. All 5 boys, together, in a location that had been searched repeatedly. But the forensic evidence revealed something that made investigators' blood run cold. For the 5 skulls showed blunt force trauma, injuries consistent with being struck from behind. Their hands had been bound, their bodies carefully arranged. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't 5 children getting lost. This was murder. But here's what connects this case to the others. The remains were found in an area that had been searched by over 300,000 people. Police with dogs, military units with metal detectors, volunteers who knew every inch of that mountain. They walked past that ravine dozens of times. Some searchers reported standing within feet of where the bodies lay. So, how did 300,000 people miss 5 bodies for 11 years? 3 cases, 3 impossible disappearances, bodies that couldn't be found, evidence that made no sense. But this final case is different, because this time we have footage of the exact moment everything went wrong. Lars Mittank was 28 years old, a construction worker from Berlin, Germany. In July 2014, he traveled to Golden Sands, Bulgaria, for a week-long vacation with friends. For 6 days, everything was perfect. Sun, beaches, and celebration. But on the final night, July 6th, something happened. Lars got into an argument with other tourists at a nightclub. Witnesses say it was minor, a disagreement about football, nothing violent. But during the altercation, Lars was punched hard in the left ear. The next morning, Lars woke up in severe pain. His friends had already left for the airport. Their flight was departing, but Lars couldn't fly. A local doctor diagnosed him with a ruptured eardrum. Flying with that injury could cause permanent damage, even brain injury. Lars was grounded. Lars checked into a cheap hotel near Varna Airport to wait for medical clearance. He called his mother that evening. Sandra Mittank remembers that conversation clearly. Her son sounded terrified. He told her 4 men were following him, men who had been at the nightclub, men who were now outside his hotel room. He said they wanted to hurt him, that they knew where he was staying. His mother tried to calm him down. She told him to go to the airport early, to stay in public places. But Lars's paranoia was escalating. He sent text messages to friends, rambling messages about being watched, about people trying to kill him. July 8, 2014, 7:30 a.m. Lars returned to the doctor for final clearance to fly. The doctor examined him. His eardrum was healing. He could fly. The doctor wrote him a prescription for antibiotics and told him to fill it at the airport pharmacy. He walked into the terminal. He went to the pharmacy. He handed over his prescription. And then something happened that no one can explain. At 8:52 a.m., security cameras captured what happened next. Lars was standing at the pharmacy counter, waiting for his medication. Then, suddenly, he looked over his shoulder. His entire body tensed. His eyes went wide. And without warning, he ran. He sprinted through the terminal, past security, past check-in counters. People jumped out of his way. Airport staff tried to stop him. He reached the main entrance. And instead of going through the doors, he crashed straight through the emergency exit. The last image ever captured of Lars Mittank shows him running across the airport parking lot toward a sunflower field. He was never seen again. Bulgarian police searched the area immediately. They found his backpack in the sunflower field, less than 200 meters from the airport. Inside, his wallet, his phone, his passport, everything he needed to get home. But Lars himself? Gone. Search dogs tracked his scent to a highway, then lost it completely. Investigators reviewed every second of airport footage. They interviewed everyone who was there that morning. No one was chasing Lars. No one was following him. The 4 men he claimed were after him, they didn't exist. Doctors later theorized that Lars was experiencing acute psychosis, that the head trauma from the nightclub punch had caused a brain injury, that he was hallucinating, seeing threats that weren't there. But here's what doesn't make sense. For 6 minutes, Lars stood calmly at that pharmacy counter. Security footage shows him relaxed, patient, waiting for his medication like any normal traveler. Then, at exactly 8:52 a.m., something changed. Something he saw. Something that made a grown man abandon everything and run for his life. 4 cases, for disappearances, and one pattern investigators refused to acknowledge publicly. Thompson walked into a jungle and vanished in an area smaller than a football field. Tiphaine Véron's phone was deliberately destroyed at the exact moment her scent disappeared. 5 children's bodies lay hidden for 11 years in a location searched by 300,000 people. And Lars Mittank saw something at that airport, something that terrified him so completely. He chose to run into wilderness rather than stay in the safety of a crowded terminal. But what connects them all is this. In every single case, the victim vanished in broad daylight, in locations that were searched extensively. And in every case, something or someone made sure they were never found. Jim Thompson's body has never been recovered. Tiphaine Véron remains missing. The fraud boys were found only after 11 years, in a place that should have been discovered immediately. And Lars Mittank? Bulgarian police received over 4,500 tips. Reported sightings from across Europe. A trucker claimed he gave Lars a ride to Germany. A homeless shelter in Munich said he stayed there for weeks. Every single lead was investigated. Every single one led nowhere. But in 2016, 2 years after Lars disappeared, something strange happened. Lars's mother, Sandra, received an email from her son's account, the one that had been inactive since his disappearance. The message was short, 3 words in German. Mir geht's gut. I'm doing fine. Sandra immediately contacted police. They traced the IP address. It came from a cyber cafe in Brno, Czech Republic. By the time investigators arrived, whoever sent it was gone. The cafe security cameras had been disabled that day, the only day in 3 years they weren't recording. So what really happened to Lars Mittank? Theory 1, he suffered a psychotic break. He's alive somewhere, living under a new identity, unable or unwilling to come home. Theory 2, he was murdered, his body hidden so well that despite international searches, despite media attention, despite his face being broadcast across Europe, he's never been found. Or Theory 3, he saw exactly what he thought he saw, and whatever was chasing him caught up. Lars's mother still searches. She travels to Bulgaria every year. She walks through that sunflower field. She stands in that airport terminal. Because somewhere, somehow, her son saw something. Something real enough to make him run. Something terrifying enough to make him disappear. The question isn't whether Lars Mittank is still alive. The question is, what did he see at 8:52 a.m. that made him choose to vanish? And could it happen to anyone? For cases, for mysteries, and patterns that connect them in ways investigators won't discuss publicly. Which theory do you believe? Was Lars experiencing psychosis? Was he murdered? Or did he see something real? Drop your theory in the comments. And if you want to dive deeper into cases like these, cases where the evidence doesn't add up and the answers don't make sense, hit that subscribe, because at Crime and Clues, we don't just tell you what happened. We show you what they're not telling you.